Welcome back. Jeez, that's the first two words of the show, and I've already screwed up. Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, the 17th day of April, year 2019. Show number 1,210. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm Shawn King.
I'm Melissa King.
On tonight's show, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple. The big news of the week was Apple and Qualcomm on Monday just sort of, literally, they're at trial. And they went, never mind. Spent 2 years going through the process, and then literally the jury gets seated. The judge gives their instructions, the opening statements by lawyers, and we're just kidding. We'll talk about that, why it happened, how it happened, and how it affected other groups, including Intel, on the show. We're also going to talk about, I don't know if you've seen the story about Samsung. Samsung has these folding phones now. So it's a phone that folds in two. So basically opens up into a tablet. Yet apparently it's a piece of crap. The review units they've sent out to reviewers are breaking. Little bit embarrassing. Teeny tiny bit embarrassing. Oopsie. So we'll talk about that. We're also going to talk about Disney versus Apple, Disney Plus versus Apple TV Plus versus Netflix. And what your thoughts and our thoughts are with regards to that. And what else? There was something else. I don't know. Well, I'll think of it later. In our starting point for Dogby segment, Dave Mark from The Loop posted a question up on the Twitters this morning. It's really interesting. And it's a question that comes up quite a lot from non-experienced photographers, shall we say. Why can't my iPhone capture this? And it's a particular thing. We'll talk about that. The iPhone's a great general use camera. The more specific you get into the things you want to shoot, the less capable it becomes. And we'll talk about that, and I'll explain that to you in our starting point photography segment. Obviously, the biggest, hugest news of this past week was Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is back. Oh, it's back, it's back. If you don't want to hear spoilers, we're going to try not to, but if you don't want to hear spoilers, turn this off, get off of IRC until 5:45. At 5:45, we'll come back and we'll go into the Jim Dalrymple segment. But right now, I
know, right?
Big picture story here first. You and I were talking about this afternoon, and it's an interesting phenomenon and not something that's happened, I think, since Lost. This appointment TV where you have to be in front of your TV set at this time to watch it because either everybody is watching it or you don't want spoilers. You need to see it right then, right now. I kind of miss that kind of television, that kind of excitement over a TV show as opposed to something that you've binged watched for 3 years. You said that you used to, anyway, binge watch a lot of TV shows, right? On Netflix?
On things that I really, really like. There were some great Australian shows that I would binge watch and things like that. Yeah, I did.
MacMan says, I think Notre Dame is more important than GOT. Yeah, of course it is. Don't be silly. Of course it is. But there's no Mac angle to that. They're going to rebuild it. It's fine. The issue, the curious issue for me is that binging versus episodic is interesting. I binge shows. You and I have binge shows. We binge Justified and Game of Thrones and other things. But there's something to be said for watching just one episode of a show than having to wait a period of time, usually a week, for the next one. Because then it lets you get into the show. It lets you discuss, if you're so inclined. Thank you. To talk about the show. We've talked about, you and I have talked about it. After the show, we laid in bed going, ooh, what does this mean? I think that means that they'll do this and they'll do this. And then Damon, or my stepson, he's a lot more into it. A little too much.
He says, Mom, I'm going to need counseling after this season's over.
Exactly. That so that means that you have more time to digest and think about it, as opposed to one after another. And when you binge watch and you watch like 4 or 5 shows in a row, which we have done, something may have happened in the second episode that you don't think to talk about afterwards because you just watch 5 hours of TV. I kind of like the. I like binge watching shows that are already over. So I know I can get all the way to the end.
Yes, but there's something to be said for binge watching. Although this isn't always the case when I binge watch. If I've seen a show before that's very in depth, like Breaking Bad, I saw it when it was episodic, and then when it came out and you could binge watch it, I got a lot. I was able to, because I already had an idea, and I wanted to look more at the nuances and different characters and how I felt about it after having already seen it. Like Game of Thrones, we did that, and I learned a lot more.
Yeah, me too.
Because for me, I'm not as, I kind of like, okay, who is that? What's that guy's name again? And it's very in depth, and there's a lot to the story. So, and honestly, Mo, although Mo has the sound off, he doesn't want to know about it. But it's the kind of show that you can just watch and go, oh, and you just want to get deeper into it.
Scott says, I can remember viewing parties each week. Scott says, one episode at a time is much more comfortable mentally. If I do more, I get such an overload, I have trouble figuring out where I'm up to, which makes sense. That's fair enough.
Yeah, unless you've seen it previously and you watch it again.
I still remember the worst binge watching I ever did was House. I never watched it for the first 3 or 4 years it was on. And someone said, you should really watch the show. All right, so I watched it. I remember watching the first 2-3 episodes. Okay, I like this. I want to punch that guy in the face.
Awful.
And as you got more and more into the show, you really wanted to punch him in the face.
Oh, he was awful.
I couldn't figure out why any of his friends, why he had friends, and B, why none of them had punched him in the face. But it really put into stark relief the idea that show was so repetitive. It was disease, incorrect diagnosis.
And he'd work it all
House
out.
House did a jerky thing, incorrect diagnosis. And then there was always, in every single show, there was that house
It's
moment.
just a recipe, really.
There was that house moment where he would go and realize, no, it's this, and the show was over. And that was the exact same show over, and you didn't get that sense from a show that you're watching week to week. But when you binge watch it, you can see it very clearly. Like 45 minutes ago, they were doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, it's a lesser quality show, though. You don't see that when you watch Game of Thrones
True.
or shows like Breaking Bad binge watching, because it's such an ongoing, in-depth story.
Scott Thrift says, I must admit to binging on Dexter.
Yeah, I binged Dexter for a while.
I had no interest in Dexter.
Oh, yeah, no, I loved Dexter.
Same with Walking
It was
Dead.
so warped. No, Walking Dead, after all, it just gets a bit annoying.
And I did not get into Breaking Bad at all.
It was brilliant.
I know.
And I love him. Like, I think he's brilliant.
I accept the fact that it was a great show, but I watched the first 3 or 4 episodes and went, yeah, I can see where this is going to end up, and I don't want to go on this journey with this guy.
It was so
I had
well
no
done.
interest in watching him spiral into inhumanity. You know?
Yeah, he
so I was
really
like,
did.
yeah, I don't.
The metamorphosis.
Yeah, I knew if it had been in the reverse, maybe I would have. But watching him go down instead of coming up, I was like, you know what? My life is shitty enough. I don't need to watch your life be shitty,
There was
too.
a lot more to it.
I
I haven't
understand
heard
that.
of this Pose. I'll have to look up
Yeah,
Pose,
don't know.
Scott. I don't know what that one is.
Scott Thrift. Walking Dead reminds me of Tweakers on Saturday night.
It's just, yeah. I did binge watch it for a while, and then I couldn't do it anymore.
And it turns out Monty is the one who killed Suits. Monty says, when I get interested in the USA Network show Suits, I went back and binge watched the previous seasons. The death knell for a show is for me to get interested in it. I get into Suits, and the writers lost their minds and ruined. Suits was never a great TV show. It was a fun TV show, and there was some gorgeous actors and some gorgeous sets.
My son loved it. Damon was addicted to it.
I liked it, but I would never say it was a great TV show.
It's ridiculous.
But I think it was, Monty, correct me if I'm wrong, it was episode 5 where they just fell off a cliff quality-wise. I don't remember what happened. I actually went back and checked to see if the writing crew had changed, because the show had so dramatically shifted in its tone and the way it used the characters. I thought, holy crap, it's a whole different writing staff, but it wasn't the same guys.
And what happened to it?
It got even worse. The direction they took the characters went really weird, and we lost interest in it. I haven't even bothered to watch the last season and a half of it.
No, Damon was very loyal, and he watched it to the end.
Monty says, lawyers that I know get stabby talking about suits. To be fair, professionals of any field get stabby talking about any show reflecting their field. Lawyers hate lawyer shows. Cops hate cop shows. Doctors hate doctor shows. Dr. E, when I lived in Portland, I'd watch doctor shows just to wind her up because she gets so pissed off. That's not how you do that procedure. She just loses her. That's not what that's called. It was very funny watching it. Yeah, techies hate tech shows. Exactly. Nerds hate Big Bang Theory. If you're involved in the thing they're talking about, and because for some shows they don't care, but other shows they cut corners for creative reasons or whatever it might be. And if you're knowledgeable at that thing, that really annoys you.
Oh yes, they never do it properly.
Yeah, CSI Cyber, that was just awful. That was just what's the other show? There was one Scorpions. Oh my God. Mention Scorpions to John Binky Welch and Binky will lose his shit. The first show of Scorpions had at some point them driving a Ferrari down a airport runway with an Ethernet cable hanging out of the belly of a plane while the guy plugged into his laptop in the Ferrari. I was like, no, I'm out. No. This is far too stupid for me to watch. This is the dumbest thing in the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like that show we watched the other night with Kevin Hart and Brian, whatever his name is. And there was a physiotherapist in it, and she was changing his catheter. And I just said, a physiotherapist would never do that. Like, it was just ridiculous.
It Crowd, another nerd show I never really.
No, and Pose isn't on Netflix. I don't know.
What's Pose about?
Scott said he. I have to. I didn't read it thoroughly at the moment, but it's not on Netflix. So.
But anyway, so Game of Thrones is an interesting show. It might be the last of the appointment TV shows. I don't know if we're ever going to get to that kind of phenomena because the TV environment is so fractured. It's so broken up now, especially now with so broken up with different stations, different subscriptions, Hulu and Disney Plus and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I wonder if we're ever going to get to a point again where we're all going to be watching the same TV show. I think the first one that I remember was MASH as a kid. Obviously, there were shows before that, but MASH was the biggest one for me as a kid. Then I think Seinfeld and Cheers and Friends was another one. I never saw the last episode of any of those shows, for that matter. And we quickly cooled off on that kind of thing. And then Lost came along, and I think Game of Thrones might be the last one. The Sopranos, that was another show I never really got into. I watched it, but wasn't a giant fan of it, although I recognized that it was a good show.
It was very good. I'd love to watch them from beginning to end.
But it wasn't one of those ones that I got addicted to like I did to others. But Game of Thrones, I think, is a really interesting show because it really makes you care about certain characters and really hate certain characters too. Mm-hmm. We all know the ones we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And then be ambivalent about other characters. I mean, I love the idea that so many people said online when they were talking about the last scene in Game of Thrones and this episode, I won't say what it is, but everyone went, oh yeah, he's an asshole. We thought he was a nice guy, but shit, I remember all the way back when he did that thing.
I love him.
He's a jerk.
I can't help it. I wrote to my son Damon. I went, oh, and I said, but I love him.
Yeah.
I love him. It's one of those shows that the villains are just so intriguing,
Yes.
and
Cersei,
I love him.
I love Cersei.
Yeah,
She's
brilliant at being just absolutely abysmally horrible.
Yeah, that's right.
She's horrible, but she gets that look on her face, and then sometimes I have empathy for her. I can't believe it.
Yeah,
I
know.
do.
It's kind of scary.
It's an interesting show.
Folks, later on the show, we're going to talk to our good friend. We're going to talk about Starting Point Photography segment, talking about the limits of the iPhone in particular focus situations. But up next, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com about Apple versus Qualcomm and Disney versus Netflix versus Apple TV and a whole bunch of other stuff. All that and much more coming up. This is Your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. Thank you guys very much for joining me here on this Wednesday evening. In our phone, we've got our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim, how you doing?
Shawn.
Let's talk about, obviously, the big news this week was Apple versus Qualcomm and Intel jumping into the picture. What are your thoughts on, first of all, the timing of what happened? The jury trial had already started when suddenly this press release went out over the wires that said, yeah, we're not going to do it.
Well, money.
How do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Apple buying more of their chips.
Why did it happen with
Maybe they just figured that they weren't going to be able to win it.
But wouldn't you have known that before you got to your lawyer's opening statements? It seemed like the lawyer gave his opening statements and went, well, that was shit. That's no, never mind. You know, I screwed that up. You know, this is going to cost us a fortune. You know?
Well, yeah, maybe it was the other way around. Maybe Qualcomm said, we don't want these to be invalidated. You know, we don't want any problems going forward.
No.
Let's just take an offer.
I think that's the interesting part about this too, is who blinked first would be the big question. And then almost immediately afterwards, Intel comes out and goes, you know what? Those 5G chips we told you guys we were working on, we can't be bothered. And they moved out of the market.
Yeah, well, that makes sense considering that what happened. because Qualcomm would just kick the crap out of them.
Yeah, but that didn't happen on the same day. What I mean is that Apple and Qualcomm didn't reach this agreement like in the lawyers' meeting before the trial. This is something that has to have happened at least a month, if not 2 months ago, so you can make all these arrangements. And then Intel didn't just suddenly on Monday afternoon decide, you know what, screw it, we can't be bothered. That's something else that had to happen a month, 2 months, maybe even longer ahead of time, right?
Intel had to be waiting to see what was going to happen.
Yeah.
They had to. Because if this whole suit, bad blood and all that, and Apple needed some 5G chips, then, hey, we're Intel. Here we are. Come buy ours. That's a lot of money for any company, as long as you can do it. I'm not convinced that Intel could do it. I'm not convinced Intel could get out of their own way right now.
Yeah, there's certainly an element of all of this. I think the timeline went that Apple heard from Intel that either our 5G chips aren't going to be ready in the time frame that you need them to be, or that they're not going to be what you need to be power-wise, battery-wise, speed-wise, and those kind of things. Now, Qualcomm wouldn't have known about that conversation, so then Apple would have gone to Qualcomm and gone, you know what, guys, let's not go through with this. We're sorry. We'll give you a big lump sum payment, and we'll keep buying your chips for another 3 or 4 years.
Let's be friends.
Let's just be friends until I can learn enough about modem design to stab you in the frickin' back. Because that's what's going to happen. Make no mistake about it. That's exactly what's going to happen. Apple is going to shiv Qualcomm at some point. I guarantee you. I'll say 3 years before Apple sticks a knife in Qualcomm's back.
Yeah, they're sharpening that knife right now.
If at some point over the next 6 months you hear that either Intel has sold their 5G modem intellectual property, their IP, to somebody, anybody, or you hear that Apple has directly bought it, you can be guaranteed that means that Apple is going to shiv Qualcomm at some point in the future.
That'd be funny.
Because Qualcomm, everyone says that Qualcomm was the winner here, and that may or may not be the case. We don't know. We don't know the terms of the settlement. But there is certainly a danger for Qualcomm that they may have pissed Apple off so much with this whole lawsuit or with a settlement, and with Qualcomm saying to Apple, hey, you got no choice. We know Intel's chips aren't going to be good enough for you guys. You got to buy them from us. You think that maybe, because if Steve Jobs were still the CEO of Apple, I would say this was a guarantee. But do you think that maybe Apple is just going to hold off and smile to Qualcomm's face, but in the meantime amass this modem chip production facility to therefore make their own 5G modems in 3 or 4 years?
Sure. I wouldn't put it past them. I mean, Apple is making chips and they're better than any chips that are out in the market now. They've got the brain trust to do it.
Yeah.
They definitely need some IP and things like that, but I'm sure that they have some of that already too.
They've certainly got their own. Yeah, I mean, there's been rumors for a while that Apple's got anywhere from 500 to 1,500 engineers working on this 5G modem thing. I think part of it is that Apple, and there's a lot of folks out there who are saying this means that Apple will announce a 5G iPhone this coming September. That's not going to happen. All right? It's just do not in any way, shape, or form think that Apple's going to have a 5G capable iPhone in 2019.
Well, there's no 5G network to run it on.
Exactly. So
despite what AT&T might say,
it was the dumbest statement I saw on Twitter today was Steve Kovacs of CNBC saying this means that Apple will have a 5G iPhone come this September. There is no way that Apple is an early adopter in this stuff. They weren't early to LTE. They weren't early to anything else. Apple is not that. People seem to think that Apple is this company, but they are not this company. They are not a company that jumps in to lead the charge on this kind of stuff.
No, they want to sell phones that work.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
You know,
Even Bloomberg, Mark Gurman said Apple needs chips that will connect to the new 5G wireless networks being introduced or risk falling behind its rivals. No.
okay, well, show me where those networks are.
Exactly. There's no point in buying a 5G iPhone today or even this year when your town, your city, your state, where you travel will not have a 5G capable cellular network. It makes no sense.
None.
MacBand says in the IRC chat room, 5G is in 2 cities. Monty, the 5G network isn't even up yet, so there's no point releasing a phone at this point in time. That's exactly the case. So all of these pundits, the much lauded Mark Gurman among them, are idiots who don't understand what is going on in the world around them. Now, that being said, I saw something really interesting from someone who I think we all know and respect, talking about the idea that this is going to happen in 2020. Now, the assumption has always been that it's going to happen in 2020 in September, because that's when Apple releases new phones. But Tim Bajarin, I don't know if you saw this, Tim Bajarin on Facebook said it's going to happen before the Japanese Summer Olympics in 2020. Which I think is a really interesting way of looking at things. And I would never disagree with Tim. Tim is a hell of a lot smarter than me and a hell of a lot more connected than any of us to this kind of stuff. But his argument is that Apple will release a 5G iPhone sometime in March, April, in order to take advantage of the Japanese 5G networks, which will be up and running at that time.
It's very interesting.
Do you think there's any possibility that Tim is right? And again, I don't like disagreeing with Tim, but
I know I don't either, but so you're going to release a new product 6 months after you released a new product in order to take advantage of 5G in one country.
Yep, that's what he says. He says Tim said they needed a 5G iPhone in 2019. I said, what makes you say that? He said the 2020 Olympics. Japan is highlighting 5G and will broadcast to mobile over 5G. At the very least, Japanese iPhones are needed for that, and they need to be in the market by late this year or early 2020, not the fall of 2020. The Olympic Committee in Japan are doing a big marketing blitz to China to get them to these Olympics. They'll want to bring 5G iPhones with them as well.
Yeah, I like you. I hate to disagree with Tim, but it throws everything off.
Yep.
It really does.
That's right.
And the reasons for not doing it make more sense than the reasons for doing it to me. You have a worldwide crowd that, people could buy from all over the world, but you're not talking, hundreds of millions of people. I mean, I don't know. Sure, it sounds like a great thing, but I don't know.
Unless Apple
I can't see it though.
Unless Apple is, in this regard, planning a Japanese specific iPhone. You know what I mean? That one that would just be sold in Japan, which they've done. They've done the products solely for the Japanese market in the past, many, many years ago, granted, but they have done it where they are targeted just that particular market for a product. So it's a possibility that there would be an iPhone, it would just be a Japanese 5G iPhone. And
that's
then
not how they do things.
Exactly. That's right.
Though.
That's right. It's not the way Apple works, and therefore it's hard to believe that they would change to such a drastic degree. And like you said, 6 months after, if we assume they're announcing one in September, 6 months later, announcing a new, in theory, better than the one they announced in September. It's hard to believe. I wouldn't bet against Tim though. I'm not going to say Tim's wrong because, like I said, he's a lot smarter and a lot more knowledgeable than I am on this stuff. But it just feels unlikely.
It does feel unlikely. There's just too many things going on here that you can't. I can't sit here and say, wow, that's amazing. Yes, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I also can't say, I'd more lean towards, no, that's not going to happen, to be honest.
Yeah. But I'm certainly.
Because Apple doesn't, it just doesn't do things like that.
But unlike other pundits, there's no way I'm ever going to say Tim Bajarian's an idiot who doesn't know what he's talking about. He's one of the few guys who I would say that I would never say that about, because Tim is a very, very smart guy. He's been around for 40 years in this industry, and while he's been plenty wrong in the past, I still wouldn't go up against him.
No, I get you.
Apple Insider's got a very interesting editorial. The big loser in the Apple Qualcomm settlement isn't Intel, it's Android.
Well, Android's a big loser in everything, so.
Well, it's an interesting point of view that they've got at Apple Insider, because the argument is that the Android handset manufacturers were looking forward to marketing their 5G phones as better than the iPhone, and then therefore taking market share away from the iPhone. If people can sit back and go, well, Apple will have an iPhone in X numbers of months, I won't buy an Android phone. Android manufacturers lose out on that potential revenue. That's the argument Apple Insider is making. Do you give that any weight?
I really believe that most people will buy a phone when they need a phone.
Yeah.
There are a certain number of people that are going to buy the latest and greatest, but is the network up and running? I mean, we had the same thing with LTE and 4G and all of this kind of stuff.
Yep.
I mean, this is not the first time we've been through something like this. So I did worry. I mean, if Apple's thing was to have Intel chips, that would worry me. But I don't know that people are going to make the switch based on all of that.
Yeah, I think Apple Insider is overemphasizing or miscalculating the degree to which the vast majority of consumers switch manufacturers. Yes, in the Android world, people do it fairly often. They'll go from Motorola to Samsung to whoever else is selling them their phone from their network that's on sale when they want to buy the phone.
Exactly.
I don't see a lot of average, techies and nerds and those who need the latest and greatest of everything might switch back and forth between iPhone and Android based on the feature set, based on network speed. But the average people, the vast majority of folks who have an iPhone, Apple knows, I think the last time I saw any numbers was 93% of iPhone buyers will buy another iPhone. I don't think that the vast 90% of those people will say, no, I'm going to switch to a 5G phone on Android and give up whatever reasons I bought an iPhone for just to get those 5G speeds. I can't see that happening. I don't think Apple Insider's got a leg to stand on here.
No, I don't think that that's going to happen. I just think that they're misinterpreting the way that people buy phones.
Yeah.
Or maybe I am. Either one of those could be true. I just don't think that people. Sure, you're gonna have if an Android phone, if Samsung comes out with a 5G phone and there's a 5G network, that works, and sure, there are going to be a lot of people that go out and buy a 5G phone, but those are the people that will buy based on features, not based on when they need it.
Yeah.
So if Apple and Android and Samsung put out a 5G phone at exactly the same time. Um, I think that it would be split. People are still going to buy their Android phones because
Yep.
you can, buy one get 30 free, and
That's right.
you know.
Yeah,
So
for me, that network speed thing, if that's the only real significant difference between an Android phone and my iPhone, and I know that my iPhone will eventually, in the next 6 months or a fairly short period of time, will get those speeds, I'm going to hold on to my iPhone. I'm already holding on to it for
yeah,
2 years, 3 years. That's the average flip rate for iPhones nowadays. I'm already holding on to it for that long. I can hold on to it for another 6 months to get that speed.
it Android phones are kind of like I don't know if everybody had this, but where we grew up, we did anyway. When you were a kid, you went to buy a car, you would literally get another for parts.
That's right.
Right? You would buy a car and then get one for parts. So, in case something broke, you would have another car there, but you would have to tow it away because it wasn't working. But
right.
you would get the parts too.
Yeah.
So that was an added bonus. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's really a thing for a lot of people.
I wrote this on Twitter the other day. This is a quote. Netflix isn't worried about Disney Plus or Apple TV Plus. Says it's excited to have the competition. I said Netflix is lying. Am I right or wrong?
No, absolutely, you're right.
Why do companies say dumb shit like that?
Yeah. When did a monopoly ever welcome the competition?
Exactly. That's right. Yeah, we own 8% of the market. Let the competition in. What the hell? We can take it. No, come on.
Standard Oil loved competition.
That's right. Exactly.
No company wants that type of competition from big players like Apple and Disney. Now, I still maintain that the biggest problem is just going to be subscription fatigue.
Yes.
We're just going to get tired. I'm not going to subscribe to Disney stuff. Apple TV stuff, it's looking really good. I'm impressed with what I saw at the event. So, I'll give that a try. But, I'm tired already. I'm tired of all the subscriptions that you need to make this stuff work. So, Netflix is in a good spot because they were really the first, and everybody loves Netflix.
Yeah.
Do you ever hear anybody say anything bad about Netflix?
Come to Canada, dude. Come on.
Hey.
Netflix Canada sucks.
That's not a real country. Come on.
It's just 51st state, right? What a dick. Jeez.
I love Canada. I'll always be Canadian. But yeah, okay, Netflix in Canada does suck, but that's because of the Canadian government, not because of Netflix. So if you really want to get down to brass tacks here, the Canadian government sucks.
Can't disagree with you on that one. I think Disney Plus has got a stone cold lock, even more so than Netflix, on the market of people who have preteens and younger children. I think that's just a given. I think that's going to be everyone who's got $7 and a preteen and younger child will get Disney Plus. That's not true necessarily of Apple TV Plus or even of Netflix. They're guaranteed of getting Netflix, and Disney's brilliant because they've locked that market in. I don't think either of these services are Netflix killers like so many pundits are trying to make them out to be. You might get these in addition to Netflix, but I don't think anyone's going to get either Apple TV Plus or Disney TV Plus instead of Netflix.
Right.
Netflix is an 800-pound gorilla, and that's not going to change unless something drastic happens. But for the most part right now, today, and for the next at least 5 years, it's Netflix plus somebody else's product, not somebody else's product and unsubscribe from Netflix.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't know that anybody can beat Netflix at what it's doing because it has great original content. It has all of the older stuff.
Yep.
Unless everybody just pulls all the shows.
Yeah.
and movies and stuff like that, which, I mean, it may seem like there are a lot of companies out there that have content, but there are actually very few. They're all owned by the same people.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
So if they all decided, well, we're only going to go to Hulu now because we own stake in Hulu,
Yeah.
well, Netflix could be in trouble then because
Speaking
it can't last on its own.
speaking of the Bajarans, Tim's son Ben, a very good analyst in his own right, posted this up on Twitter last week. I thought it was really interesting. It was a Twitter poll. He said, Apple will bundle their subscriptions together in one price offering. What price range do you believe Apple will price a subscription bundle of Apple Music, Apple News Plus, Apple Arcade, and Apple TV Plus? Maybe iCloud, he says. What monthly price would you pay for that bundle, Jim?
$5.
You pay more than that. Come on.
$20.
You're in the 22% margin. 22% of people say $20 to $30. I said $39.99. That's 32% think it's $30 to $40. 26% say $40 to $50, and 20% say greater than $50 a month.
Well, no, at $50, that's not a bundle.
Well, no, it is a bundle. It's just a really freaking expensive bundle. It's in a bundle I'm not going to pay for, that's for sure. I think that between 20 and 40 is where Apple is going to come down on this, if it includes all of that stuff: music, news, arcade, TV Plus, maybe more iCloud storage. Maybe some people have said they'll throw in Apple Care Plus, which I doubt very much they would do that.
No, they won't do that.
That's not going to happen. But I think that's...
And I don't need arcade.
Yeah,
I don't want arcade.
But you can see the arcade being a bundle. If you don't use it, Apple doesn't care, but they're going to still put it in the bundle. I don't watch HGTV, but it's in our cable bundle. So, you
should.
Yeah. I don't even know how to use tools. I'm not allowed to use tools. I can't watch those shows. But
I've never been allowed to use. I wasn't even allowed to have a tool belt.
I know. I would have tripped over it. But first of all, do you think Apple will bundle these subscriptions?
I hope they will.
Yeah.
I mean, there's too many things to just. Oh, do I want that? Well, what about this?
Yeah.
They don't want you to think that much to pay.
Mm-hmm.
No company should want you to think that much before you pay. You should just go in and say, oh, $20 or $25 or whatever it is. Is that worth it or no?
Yep.
Yes, I'll take that. And it includes everything.
And they can't do a bundle of, okay, if you pick, let's say there's 5 products. If you pick 3, here's one price. If you pick 2, here's one price, here's 4. They're not going to do that. It's going to be, you either buy them all separately or you get all 5 separately. Whether you use them or not, we don't care. You're getting all 5 with one price. Apple's not going to bifurcate the market that way by letting you take 2.5 from here and 1 from there and 3 from there.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do because they, despite the fact that we say they're not going to do this, they do have choices on how to sell this thing. So, maybe I only want Apple Music and the video.
Yeah.
I mean, when it comes to picking 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5, yeah, they might just say, well, you got to take it all.
Yep, that's right.
But, I don't know.
When you get review product from Apple, does it break in half when you use it?
Oh, all the time. All the time. I mean, yeah.
For those folks who don't know, Samsung has sent out the review units of their Galaxy Fold, the folding tablet phone kind of thing, which in a sci-fi kind of way seems like a cool idea, except it turns out that all the review units are shit. They've all broken. This is going to be the best story of the day. The Verge has broken. Bloomberg's has broken. Multiple reviewers have said CNBC's has broken. They're all breaking. This has got to be the absolute worst case scenario for Samsung. They have this device that the press wasn't allowed to play around with during the launch. Now they pick these select few members of the media to get the word out, and guess what? The word ain't good.
Yeah.
What would
Well,
have happened? What would have happened if Apple had given you a product like this? Would you have written about it immediately? What's the and give the
If
audience?
if it broke in half,
Yeah.
oh my God.
What,
Yeah, I mean, you cannot have a product that you send out to reviewers that breaks in half.
Yeah.
You cannot. You just can't. I mean, that's like death. You just can't.
But what's the procedure
I mean,
from a reviewer's point of view? I get this device. 2 days later, it's broken. Explain to the audience what happens behind the scenes if something doesn't work the way you as a reviewer expect it to.
so there's a couple of ways that you can do things depending on what happens. So I've had review product before with very early beta software.
Yeah.
But the review was for the hardware, not the software.
Yeah.
So you're a part of the software made the hardware, the new hardware and stuff work. So if that happens and the software is janky and messing up, well, then I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say it's not the hardware. They give me another one to reload the software or whatever because you don't have it.
Yep.
And everything works and it's good and okay, janky piece of beta software,
yeah.
whatever, no big deal. If you get a piece of hardware, the reviews on the hardware, and like you open up a MacBook Pro and the screen falls off,
yeah,
you can give them a courtesy call,
yep.
and say, yo, I'm writing the story, ready to post,
yep.
and the screen when I opened it just came right off and fell on the floor. Yeah. Just wanted to let you know. Thanks.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
Now, would you then still go ahead and write the review and say this thing broke?
Sure. I mean, you can ask them for a comment.
Yep.
You can, there's certainly, you can say in the story when contacted,
yep.
Samsung said this or whatever. But I'll tell you, in the 25 years or so I've been doing this, I've never had an Apple product. There was one product years ago that I actually refused to write about. It was so bad.
From Apple or somebody else?
No, from somebody else.
Yeah.
I can't even remember what it is now. This is probably in the early 2000s. It was so bad that I just say, get it out of my house.
Yeah.
And then, as you couldn't expect, the company went under. But
the reason why I'm asking this is because all of these stories say that these devices are broken after a couple of days. They get the review unit, they use it for a couple of days, it's broken. My expectation, because these guys are not in collaboration with each other, if I'm God forbid, Mark Gurman at Bloomberg, kill me now, and this thing breaks, I contact my PR rep at Samsung going, hey, dude, the phone broke, send me another one. And then I'd wait to get the other one, thinking that this first one was just a fluke, and they'd give me another one. And if the second one broke, then I'd write a story that says I had two of these that broke. But these guys haven't done that. All of these guys have gotten the review units. They obviously were under NDA. The NDA was up, and they said that 2 days after they got 2 days ago, these things started these individually started breaking them, and they all wrote the stories at the same time. So does that mean that they didn't contact Samsung PR, or they didn't care, or they didn't want to give Samsung the benefit of the doubt and say, hey, just send me another phone and I'll try that one out?
Oh, I would suggest that they did contact Samsung. I mean, that's what I would have done. I mean, yeah, I mean, they're sending you a product that is ready for sale.
Yep.
And, that's what your job is, to review. Well, you have to review it.
Yeah, but you also know that this is a product that maybe you got a bad version of it. Then you would go, wouldn't you go back to the Samsung PR person and say, "This broke, send me another one."
Maybe they didn't have any more to send.
Thing's supposed to go on sale next week.
Maybe they only had the 3.
Unfortunately, Samsung will, as they say, bounce back from this, but this has got to be a huge PR nightmare for them, if nothing else. It's not an actual manufacturing nightmare. They're going to have to do something because now everyone knows about this. This is all the nerds are talking about. This is all over tech media. And the word's going to filter down to the average person that these things aren't working the way you think they are, or they're going to break if you use them.
Right.
Do you think Samsung is going to come out with a Fold 2 in a couple of weeks that fixes these problems, or is this problem endemic to the device?
Well, we talked about that when they first came out with it. People said then, "Oh, Apple has to come out with a folding phone."
That's right.
No, they don't.
No, they don't.
And this is why. They don't have to come out with a folding phone. They don't have to follow the crowd. They don't have to come out with NFC.
Yep.
They don't have to come out with a netbook.
Yep.
They don't. And they read the market right. So, I think, first of all, kudos to those who wrote those reviews and pointed out the bad product. Because that's what a review is supposed to be. Good or bad, it's supposed to be honest. And if your phone broke, then you have to say that the phone broke.
Yep.
And I bet if it was a software issue because, something on this phone needed new software in order to make this happen, and that's the only thing that happened, you probably might have had a paragraph about it, like, I had some janky software or something, but you may not have heard anything about it because by the time it reaches the market, it's all good. So
I would tell anyone who's considering buying one of these things to at least wait a month before all this shakes out. Maybe the reviewers, as Mac Rumor said, maybe the reviewers got a bad batch because it's hard to believe, not impossible, but hard to believe that this thing got through whatever QA testing, quality assurance testing Samsung puts these things through and made it into the hands of reviewers if this is a problem of all of these devices. Maybe it was a bad batch. Who knows? But regardless, tell your friends, if they want to buy one of these things, go ahead, fill your boots, but don't buy it for the first month or the first month and a half just to make sure. I think this is go ahead.
If you really want to be sure, wait for like 10 years.
That's right.
Save that money. Every time you think about going to buy that phone, put that money into a separate bank account.
Put it in a kid's college fund. Not even your kids. Any kids.
Any kid.
Got to be better than that. Our good old friend Uncle Walt Mossberg wrote on Twitter today. I think this was kind of interesting. Apple posted that really well done video. Of course, it's a well done video. It's done by Apple about Mother Nature. Don't mess with Mother. Wonderful video. Walt Mossberg said, "Yes, this is an iPhone ad posted by an Apple executive. Yes, it notes that additional hardware and software was used, but it's absolutely gorgeous, and I'm amazed it was shot on a phone. Don't watch it to love or hate the iPhone. Watch it to enjoy the beauty of nature." Now, I agree with Walt on that point, but isn't it slightly disingenuous of Apple to put in very, very small letters, additional software and hardware required to do these things, instead of shooting a video that the average person could shoot? Don't show me a video that's been done by professionals. Show me the video that the average person can create, not this special effects laden one with gear and software that, by the way, you don't tell us what it is that not everybody can use.
So the way that I read that is that because it is, shot on iPhone, that it is shot on iPhone.
Yes, I agree.
That they probably took that footage and put it into Final Cut Pro and put out a video. So the extra hardware would be your Mac. The extra software would be Final Cut Pro. And I think that we all fully expect that any broadcast TV commercial that is done on a Mac with Final Cut Pro, or some of these extras.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't read much into that beyond that, because I expect that for every commercial out there. When I look at Samsung, say, shot on a Samsung or whatever thing they use, I don't think, okay, well, all the editing and everything was done on the Samsung phone too. I mean, this isn't just about Apple. I just think it's about broadcast in general. It's just the way things are done.
Except, and I love saying this, you're wrong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I see. Yep.
For example, another wonderful ad that Apple shot, the Reef Maldives, the video about the Maldives whale shark research program. A beautiful, beautiful video. Unlike the mother video, in the Reef Maldives video, Apple says shot on iPhone XS with the aid of FreeFly Movi Cinema Robot, Filmic Pro software, Access Go XR waterproof housing for the iPhone XS Max, and Beast Grip. See, in that one, they told you it wasn't just the iPhone. Yes, it's fair to assume that it was edited on a Macintosh using at least iMovie, if not Final Cut Pro. That's a fair statement.
Maybe they get tired of listing all of that shit. Maybe they just said, okay, now it was done with extra software and hardware. That's a lot easier than saying what you said. So, in actual fact, I am correct.
No, because what you're saying is that they only used a Mac and only used Final Cut Pro. I'm saying they're using third-party software and hardware to do this that the average person doesn't have access to necessarily.
Oh, no, I don't agree with that at all. See, you're just so wrong. It's like all of a sudden halfway through the show, you snort some cocaine and you just go off the rails. So maybe they used a Beast Grip, or maybe they used, all of this other stuff to make it happen. It was still shot on an iPhone, and it was put together and then, put together on a Mac. Yep. And then exported, and here you have it. So once again, it's like, we're 20 years straight. I'm right. Again.
I would still rather see videos shot by average people using the software that comes on their Mac. There's no reason why Apple couldn't shoot one of these videos and have some mom doing this, shots of their kids that could be just as interesting, just as beautifully shot, using a Mac, using an iMac, and using iMovie to create these. Let's see those videos. Let's see the videos that average people shoot as opposed to the videos that pros shoot, is all I'm saying.
Average people shoot their fucking cats. I mean, come on. Let's be serious here. Oh my God, see? Next week we need less cocaine.
Okay, well then let's wait for next week's show and see what happens.
You're just trying to piss me off now.
I'm not trying, but I always do a good job of it. Folks, been talking to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. His podcast, The Dalrymple Report, is up on the iTunes store. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Shawn.
Talk to you later. See ya.
Bye.
You guys got to tell me, am I wrong? Is it not bad, but is it at least disingenuous of Apple to show these videos that give the impression that all you need is an iPhone XS Max to do these, or iPhone XR, when in fact you need a lot of other things, not just a Mac, not just iMovie or Final Cut Pro, but you conceivably need an underwater housing and different software and that kind of stuff. I don't know. I just like the idea. I would like to see Apple show average people doing one of these videos. That's just my opinion. When we come back from this short break, we'll talk about Dave Mark. Speaking of The Loop, Dave Mark posted a story or a question up on Twitter this morning that we got into a little bit of a discussion about. And we'll talk about that, about the performance envelope of the iPhone and what you can do to avoid some of the issues that Dave Mark found himself in. All that and hopefully much more coming up. This is Your Mac Life.
Your Mac Life.
Welcome back to Your Mac Life. This is the starting point photography segment. Thanks you guys very much for joining me, whether you're tuned in live or listening to the archive. As always, I'm Shawn King.
I'm Melissa King.
Just wanted to reintroduce you. It's been so long since you were here last time.
Aw, in case you forget. Anyway, keep going.
God, what are you going to be mean for? Huh? What are you going to be mean for?
Melissa, I did,
You did what?
Monty. No, actually, Monty, I didn't. I cooked dinner for my son and packed his lunch for tomorrow and had a drink.
You had a drink? What did you have to drink?
None of your beeswax. Okay, let's go in. Come
wait.
on, let's
Are
go
you,
into.
Are you drinking whiskey?
Let's go into the starting point photography
Are you
segment
drinking whiskey?
of the show.
I'm
No.
in so much trouble. If she's drinking whiskey, I'm just dead. I'm just a
What are you
dead
going to
man.
talk about tonight?
Dave Mark posted up on Twitter. He said, a few pics I took with a DSLR camera, he said. Love to be able to capture images like this using my iPhone camera, even via Halid camera. Can't find a way to get fast enough focus while on single focal point, e.g. the bird beak. iPhone wants to focus on the fence, not the bird. So now let me just cover up my beautiful wife's face and show this to you guys. And this is the picture that Dave is, the image that Dave is talking about. So you can see this cute little bird, bouncing around on his front step. It's got a sesame seed in its beak. And the problem Dave says he's having is the iPhone wants to focus on something else, which makes sense. The issue with regards to this is the fact that the iPhone is trying to get focus on whatever's closest to it. And in these pictures, you can see there is a fence post. What the hell was that? There is a fence post or something in between the bird and and Dave. And the iPhone wants to focus on the thing. The iPhone generally, with its autofocus, doesn't know what you think is important. You have to tell the phone what you think is important. The phone
Don't you use your grid?
Yes. If you don't tell the phone what's important, it assumes the closest thing to you is what's important. In this case, the fence post. So what you have to do is you have to, in this regard, tell the iPhone what you think is important. And Melissa, how do you do that?
You would use your grid, and then you would get wherever you want your, well, not in the center, hopefully, your bird, and you would press on your grid, and then the iPhone knows where you want to focus. And then if you even move away from that and go back, it will still focus on that same spot.
Mostly right. A little bit wrong. You don't need to have the grid on. The grid can be on or off. It doesn't matter. The tapping on it works whether the grid's on or off. The tapping works when you tap it, you're telling the phone, that's what I want you to focus on. That spot. If that thing moves, if it's a bird and it moves away, the iPhone is still focused on that spot.
Mm-hmm.
If you tap and hold, that's what you didn't say before. If you tap and hold and you get that flashing yellow, now the focus will stay on that thing if you move your phone. The focus will not move. If your phone is steady, you tap and hold, and then the bird moves, focus won't move with the bird. It'll stay on that spot.
But the square is highlighted on the grid?
Yeah, but the grid has nothing to do with this.
No. Okay.
No, it's okay. What are you going to say?
Well, then what's the point of the grid?
The grid is a compositional tool. This is tapping and holding is a focus tool. So you use the grid to get your composition so the most important thing isn't in that center of that grid, and gives you an idea of balance of your shot. So it gives you the idea of the horizon being higher than the dead center. It gives you the idea of you want something's eye on one of those grid intersections kind of thing. Whereas the tapping and holding is a focus thing. Also an exposure. When you tap and hold, then you can change your exposure by sliding up and down. Things will get brighter or darker depending on what you want.
Right.
So the issue with this is the iPhone itself. One of the problems that we have is that our iPhones are such good such good cameras, we forget they're still on phones. And what I mean by that is the iPhone is a really, really good camera for a phone. But the more specific you want to get, the less capable the iPhone is. And I'll explain that. So Dave wants to shoot an object that's moving. It's a little bird that's bobbing up and down and hopping around and turning its head left and right. Its eyes are moving. Its head's moving up and down. If things are moving, the iPhone has a difficult time refocusing. When you tap on that bird, the iPhone, not a problem. I'll focus right here in this spot. The iPhone isn't focusing on the bird. The iPhone is focusing on that spot in the world. As long as that spot doesn't move, the iPhone will keep focus on that spot. But if something in that spot moves away, the iPhone focus will not follow it. So you tap on the bird's in focus, bird moves away, bird moves out of focus. Because the iPhone is still staring at that spot and focusing on that spot. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So what Dave is trying to do is trying to get very fast focus on a slow focusing device. And that's almost impossible to do. Plus, he's fighting the object that's closest to him, a fence post or a railing. So you're fighting the iPhone. You're doing what I call shooting outside its performance envelope. You're trying to do 0 to 60 in a car that you're trying to do 0 to 60 in 3 seconds in a car that can only do it in 10 seconds. So don't work outside the envelope of the iPhone. Know what your iPhone can do and what your iPhone can't do. It's almost more important. So in this regard, what Dave could do, the first thing I would tell Dave is get away from the fence posts. The fence posts aren't helping your shot compositionally or focus-wise. So if you can, either get your lens closer to the fence post so they move out of the frame, or go stand somewhere else. These are birds and you have sunflower seeds. Those birds will follow you anywhere. That's an easy thing to do. So just get more sunflower seeds, put them somewhere else. The other thing you can do is once you've gotten that confusing focus point of the fence and the railing out of the way, the next thing you can do is tap on that spot again and wait for a bird to hop into the spot and then shoot the photo. As opposed to tapping on the bird and then having the bird move away, tap on the spot and let the bird hop into your frame, into your focus point. And when the bird does, you hit the shutter button. And the other thing is burst mode on your iPhone is always turned on. So you tap and hold on that shutter button, it'll take a bunch of photos. And maybe 1 or 2 or 3 of them in that group of photos that you took will be the photo that you wanted. This is where the iPhone doesn't work as well as people's expectations of it. One thing I always notice when I see a lot of these photos shot on iPhone kind of things, quite often they're very well lit and they're still life. The thing in them isn't moving. I don't think I've ever seen a shot on iPhone winner of a horse running by or a race car or a bird flying, because the iPhone doesn't do that very well. It can't capture movement by changing its focus very well in that manner. Monty curses burst mode. I know, I hate burst mode. Burst mode used to be something you could turn on and off, and that was great. Mine was off most of the time, but every now and then I would turn it on. Having it on all the time now is Whoever at Apple made that decision, I would like to punch you in the face. Simple as that. Now, if you have a DSLR, all these problems go away. This is where the niche nature of the iPhone of DSLRs is coming in handy. As you want to take general photos, still life and portraits and things that aren't moving, your iPhone's as good as most beginner level DSLRs. But the more specific you get in the things that you want to shoot, the less capable your iPhone is, and the more capable your DSLR is. Had a woman, we're teaching our beginning photography class here in our hometown of Gibson's in a couple of weeks, and someone asked me, my son's a boxer, and I'd love to be able to take better pictures of him in the ring. And I said, what do you shoot with? She said, an iPhone. I said, that's going to be really tough, because having been in many a boxing arena, it's going to be dark. The kid's going to be moving fast. You're going to be sitting a fair distance away. It's going to be very difficult to get good iPhone shots of that situation. But a DSLR, generally, with increasing your ISO, lowering your shutter speed, increasing your aperture, getting a good lens, MacMan. Something like boxing needs a real camera. Real camera is unfortunate way of framing it, but it needs a DSLR. So Mark, in this case, if he had a DSLR, he could do this thing called continuous autofocus. And what that is you focus on that little bird, and as the bird moves, your camera is smart enough to move the focus with the bird. As opposed to the iPhone, which focuses on the spot, your DSLR will focus on the bird. And so when the bird moves around, the autofocus moves around. It's called continuous autofocus. And it works really well on things like that are moving in a either left to right to you, right to left, or back and forth, or even up and down for that matter. So that's an example of where the iPhone gets beaten to death by DSLR. Low light conditions and fast moving things, or even slightly quick moving things, not even fast moving things like a bird. So if you have a DSLR and you want these kinds of shots, look at how to change your focus to what's called continuous autofocus, and you'll see that it'll move around as it's looking for the bird jumping around. Your focus point will move around. Also, turn on burst mode on your DSLR to capture those shots. Was that clear?
Well, I think trying to take a photograph of a bird under any circumstances is very difficult. So, and I know that.
Yeah. We had two. What did you guys figure out what kind they were?
We thought they were barred owls.
Barred owls, not barn owls?
Barred.
Oh, well, I thought you guys were saying
like
barn.
barred on the beach.
Oh, I didn't know.
Well, BARRED, sorry. No, not like barred on the beach.
So we
barred owls.
So we're lying in bed a couple nights ago. Melissa goes, look, and she points out the window, and sitting in the tree that's out here was this fair-sized cat. What cat-sized?
A bit bigger than a raven, I would say.
Raven-sized owl sitting inside our window, and another owl came and sat down.
It's beautiful.
Didn't even try to take a picture.
No.
Utterly no point with the iPhone to try to take a picture of that. It was dark. It was after sunset. It was full dark outside. No,
we could have, if it was light enough, we could have got quite beautiful photographs of them. They weren't moving.
It wasn't full dark because we could see them silhouetted against the sky. So it was blue hour, late blue hour. But there was no point taking an iPhone shot.
Oh, no, not at all.
How would you have taken a picture of them?
I would have put the lens right up against the glass of the window.
What I would have done is you would have had to coordinate this with somebody who had a flashlight. And I would be burst moding the spot where the owl was and then have someone turn a flashlight on.
Oh, at that time of night?
Yeah.
Oh.
The flashlight might have scared them away, but you might have gotten a couple of shots before they flew off.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way you can do that. Now, if you had a DSLR Even then, it would have probably been too dark for a DSLR. But you could have increased your ISO, which increases the light sensitivity of your camera's sensor. So rather than it being at, say, 100 ISO, that light, you probably have to blow it all the way up to 3200 ISO to make it very, very light sensitive. And you still probably wouldn't have gotten the shot. Those are the kind of shots that once you learn more about photography, once you learn what your camera can and can't do, those are the shots you wouldn't bother even trying to get. You wouldn't waste your time trying to get that shot.
You just want to enjoy the moment.
Exactly.
I mean, it was beautiful to see them there.
Recognize that you can't get the picture and just enjoy the moment, as opposed to fiddling with cameras, whether it's ISO, DSLRs, or iPhones, trying to take this. Don't.
Oh, no, because then you miss the opportunity.
Then you miss the beauty of watching these two creatures outside of our window.
That's right.
That's why I didn't even bother trying to get a photo of them.
Oh, yeah. No, it was just a treat.
Let's see, we get emails from you guys over the past little while we were away. Where'd my email program? Why is my email program closed?
Dave's being silly.
What's Dave being silly
He's
about?
just being silly.
Come on. I'm waiting for my email program to open up. Non-responsive application. Mail. Come on. Open mail. Why is mail being a you know what? Stop it. Just stop it. It's just so weird.
If that lady is, well, I'll talk about it after. There's a boxing place here on the coast, and it's not like she might want to take. I can see that she might want to take pictures of him
Sure.
here in the training.
Oh yeah. I'm not sure
It's
where.
training. Yeah, there's a boxing place here.
Why? Our friend Don Beck. This is from a month ago. Sorry, Don. I'm just getting to this email now. Currently working my way through the most recent YML. Heard you and Jim reminiscing with the early days on the World Wide Web. Although I already had a Mac by then, I was behind the curve in finding out about the web. My connection, however, to the very early web is that I have met Tim Berners-Lee a few times. He's the guy who invented the World Wide Web.
Oh.
So that's pretty cool, Don. A very good friend of mine, Alan Kotok, worked with him as an associate chairman of the W3C, and I got to speak to Tim at a memorial service. And don't get me started about name dropping. A friend of mine was employee number 10 at Adobe. Another friend of mine wrote the first text-based colossal cave adventure. But again, I was on the peripheral of everything else. As usual, I really enjoy listening to you, Melissa, and Jim. David Grau says, I have a number of older photos scanned in from my childhood. Would like to clean up the scratches and such. Is there a particular app you'd recommend? For either the iPad or the Mac, I have an iPad Pro and a 15-inch MacBook Pro. I said, good, fast, cheap, pick two.
That's an interesting question.
The biggest problem is getting the photos into a digital format. Once that's done, then it's just time. It's just editing. That's all it is.
What if you just take a picture of your old picture?
Yeah, you're a clever girl. It may not have the resolution you want it to have. Depends on what you want to do with these pictures. If you're just going to put the pictures on Facebook, yeah, you could do that.
Yeah, but I mean, they're memories. That's really what they are. They're probably not very good, but I'm just saying you can take a picture of your picture.
Mm-hmm. You could do that.
And then you can edit that, right?
Yes, correct. Photoshop will do it, and there's lots of tutorials on Photoshop of how to clean up old photos, and a lot of it can be automated. On the iPad, Snapseed can do healing, and it's a free app. It can't do repair. It can heal minor little bits, but if there's a lot of damage, that's not going to do you any good. And then I asked this same question on Twitter and got an example from Bill Nation, used Pixelmator, did a really good job of fixing up an old photo. Lauren Finkelstein also likes Pixelmator on the iPad. Mark likes Pixelmator. Karen Yesovich Schmucker says Photoshop. And then Mark Crump says Affinity Photo. So there are a bunch of apps out there that will do that for you. The biggest issue you're going to have is it tends to be time consuming. You can get, as anyone who edits photos knows, you can get lost in editing photos and spending a lot more time than you actually need to on the photos. Don't try to make the photos look perfect like when they were originally shot, because we know they're not. So there's no reason for you to go in and clean up every single bit of grain and dirt. Make the photos as good as you can, given that you're not a professional retoucher. Take out the most egregious scratches and folds and gaps in it. But for the most part, don't work real. As long as the photo's recognizable, I wouldn't put a lot more effort into it than that. Once you get good at it, let's say you've got a couple hundred photos, after about the first 10, you're going to know how to do it. You shouldn't take more than 30 seconds to a minute to fix up any of the subsequent photos. I just don't want you to waste a whole lot of time on these kind of things. But if it's a hobby and you're having fun doing it, then there you go. Dave D says some scanning services can do it as part of the process, and Graphic Converter can also do it as well. I got this lovely email from Don Beck again. Sorry, this is another Don Beck email, but it's from a while ago. Don, I don't know where your emails have gone. I bet Don thinks I'm ignoring him. Don sent a photo of his exercise machine and told us that, sorry, for some reason it came in like this, and I got to do this, and I got to do this. And I got to make sure the audio is right because this piece of software just hates me. So now you guys should be able to see Don's exercise machine. And what it is it's the stairs in his house. Don says, since you were talking about exercise on YML, I thought I'd add my latest approach. This is free and it actually works.
Good for him.
Got the idea from my son's neighbor. The first day, I climbed 1 flight of stairs, round trip, up and down. Next day, 2 flights. Each day, I added 1 more flight. I got to 33, but then time constraints made me take a day off and a weekend, and I started over. This time, I'm adding 5 each day, and I'll get back to 33, and then back to 1 more day. Today, I did 30, so I'm glad I'm getting back in the swing of things. I'm overweight and sort of sedentary, so this seems to work. I've got 185 acres of beautiful land, great walking trails directly across the street from me. And every time I go there, I chide myself for not doing it much more often. But I don't. I have a low-impact hand-me-down exercise machine to give me aerobic exercise. It's set up with a small TV and a Roku to take my mind off what I'm doing, but I haven't seemed to be able to get myself to do more than 3 days in a row. But the stairs are right there in my face every time I walk through the house. They're easy to get to. Seems to be working. At my age, you think you're getting old. My legs can't do all the work, so I use the railings to help me balance, use my upper body to pull me up. So I get an upper body workout as well. The main problem is, it's boring, he says. That's where you and Melissa come in. I used to only listen to podcasts while I was driving around the island, but now I also use my stair climbing to listen. Thanks to you, I'm distracted enough most of the time so that the time goes by quickly. Keep up the good work, and I'll try to do the same. Aww.
Good for you, Don.
That's so cool for you, Don.
I just think that is so cool. I love it. I admire that.
I remember back in the original days of the show when it was a 2.5-hour, 3-hour show. I heard from a listener in Paris who would rollerblade the Champs-Elysees. Yeah, lucky bastard. For the duration of the show.
Not to him. It's just where he lives.
Exactly. That's right. It's probably not special to him at all.
Not really. No.
Just a pain in the ass
It's just a place.
But he would put the show on his Walkman at that time. He would put it on. Some MP3 player he had. He put the show on his MP3 player, and he would rollerblade for the length of the show. When the show was over, he'd go back home.
Yeah.
I heard also from another couple who had a splitter, and they'd walk while listening to the show. And they'd go for a 2.5-hour, 3-hour walk around their neighborhood or whatever it was, and wouldn't come home until the podcast was over. I always love hearing stories about that kind of stuff. So thanks very much, Dawn, for that. I appreciate it.
Yes, very much.
I think it's it. Show's done. We're finished.
Podcasts are perfect for treadmills and lawn mowing.
I
have a friend he's a brilliant artist, but he works as a janitor, and that's That's what he does when he's doing his work as a janitor. He listens to podcasts.
Yep.
Yeah, he picks his ones, and some of them are very educational. He's learned a lot while
I
he's
don't know if
been
I could
doing
do.
that.
Could you do it during lawn mowing? I don't know if I could. I
Hmm,
think the noise would be too loud in order to get
yeah.
the volume of the podcast over the volume of the.
Yeah,
Lawnmower.
maybe not while I'm lawn mowing.
By the way, she does lawn mowing. Now, why do you do the lawn mowing?
I did it just because I like my house to look tidy. I don't want it to look scruffy.
You like
it's
the
important to me. Yeah, I like it. Maybe I'd like to sit back and have someone else do it, but I do like it. I get a lot of satisfaction from mowing the lawn.
Good. Folks, that's it for tonight's show. I want to say thanks very much, as always, to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com for joining us here each and every Wednesday. And thanks to you guys for being here on the show. As always, thanks to my lovely wife, Melissa. As always, I've been Shawn King.
I'm Melissa King.
And you've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya.